And hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. This is a podcast for people with brains who want to know how to optimize their brain function. So today we are interviewing Josh Perry. And man, this is great. This guy is very, very cool. BMX rider. You see this guy on a half pipe. He's killing it. He's amazing. And actually, a concussion saved his life. We'll go into that, but he had a brain tumor that was really, really affecting him. And because he had a concussion, he had an MRI that showed this brain tumor and eventually saved his life. And we talk a lot about how being a survivor means that we are studying like our life depends on it, because it does. And the experience of studying like your life depends on it, of learning out of necessity instead of to pass a test, is so valuable. I want to thank everybody who's left a review, who's left comments. It really helps us get the word out and, have this podcast in more people's earbuds so we can reach more people and affect more change in healthcare. Speaking of which, I also work with clients who often have a loved one in a medical crisis. I also work with people who have a loved one that's doing a whole lot better and is throughout their recovery, and throughout the whole spectrum, the whole hero's journey of the hardest moment, the hit, the coma, going through all the way through the hero's journey to where we're paying the fortune forward and most effectively helping people. So yeah, if you'd like to get in touch with me about consultations, send me an email to consult@feedabrain.com or go to feedabrain.com/consult and fill out the questionnaire and schedule a phone call with me. Would love to connect with more people and help more people. So yeah, coming back to Josh Perry, this is an excellent episode. We talk a lot about mindset and how we can mold our reality based on what we choose to give our attention to. So check it out, and thank you guys again. All right, without further ado, Josh Perry. So what's up, Josh? It is so good to have you here. Actually, L. Russ introduced us via Instagram, and we kind of passed a couple messages back and forth. And then I saw you at KetoCon, and we got to really connect there. And man, your story is just so powerful. So why don't we just dive in? Tell me about who you were, what the whole spiel.
For sure, yeah, and it's great to connect again. And yeah, KetoCon, we got to meet in person, so that was rad. It's always being able to good to see the face in real time opposed to the Instagram profile picture and the name. So I appreciate your time today and the opportunity to share. And yeah, I guess long story short, just where it all started. Grew up Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and like most kids, got into baseball and basketball at a young age, and then wandered off to the skate parks, found skateboarding, rollerblading, and then saw that bikes could do tricks on the same ramps, and that looked more appealing to me for various reasons. And then moving into high school, it got to the point where I stopped playing school sports and was just going to a technical high school because I knew come sophomore year I could go to work for 2 weeks and then go back to academics 2 weeks. And at that time I was traveling, competing. So that meant less school time, more money to be made and to spend on my travels for competition, and started getting into the professional ranks come my junior year. And that's when BMX just took over. I stopped playing school sports. Like I said, I got an ultimatum from my boss that was like, you got to pick between work and BMX. So I was taking a lot of days off to travel. And now I'm professional and I'm living out my dream, and it's just starting. And so it was a no brainer. And I was like, all right, yeah, thanks. And I'm gonna go this way and see how it goes. And parents who were supportive, they allowed me to drop out, and I moved from Massachusetts to North Carolina at the age of 17 to pursue BMX. And then 4 years later, got my GED, and then have gone on to become really passionate about learning and educating myself in specific topics like health and wellness. But yeah, along the way, just multiple, obstacles, 3 different brain tumor diagnoses, several TBIs. My brother took his own life last summer, and that was like one of the weirdest points in my life, and the second time I'd really vividly experienced depression. And a lot of these things have just kind of been like wake up calls to the potential I have in my own life, but also to influence the lives of others. And it's kind of put me on what I say purpose. I was on self for a while, just trying to live out my dreams. And then all these things have just added up, and my interests and passion for all these things have grown. And just by sharing my story along the last 9 years, specifically with the brain aspect, it's been amazing to see the effects that other people have from hearing my story. And really taking note of that after the 3rd diagnosis, it just kicked me into gear to be 100% all my efforts on the purpose to serve and support others. So still ride at the same level because I love it, but I don't compete. I don't deal with the BMX industry. I just solely focus on all my efforts being to serve and support other people, and of course live my dreams. And so yeah, that's the long story short.
We're on the same page with so much of that, like folks in the experts on positively affecting the most lives, and I really love that like, you still ride BMX, and the amount of brain injuries you must have had over the years is enormous. And watching your video at the beginning of your presentation, it's really, really moving, especially when you started talking about your brother. But when you talk about how one of those brain injuries saved your life.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So 2009, I had rode X Games. I had started traveling internationally, competing on TV, paying sponsors, and literally just living my dream. And at the same time, that whole year, I'd gone to the doctor's office multiple times, these debilitating headaches and migraines to the point where I'd actually vomit, lose my vision, and all the works. And I'd go in every time and I'd say, hey, should we scan my brain, like an X-ray, CAT scan, MRI, like something? Because you guys are saying I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm in a lot of pain, and it doesn't feel right. And at that point, towards the end of the year, I started to accept that as my new reality. And I was like, well, I guess just suffering is just going to be a part of this. And I just try to put it off to the back of my mind as much as I could to pursue my dream that I was living. So moving into the off season of 2010, it was March 2010, and I'm trying a variation of a trick I had learned in the foam pit. Now I'm trying it, a variation of this in the foam pit as well. But I felt really confident with it, felt pretty dialed, went and tried on the real ramp for the first time. So that way I could, progress to the competition. And I had fallen and hit my head and got a concussion. And now all of a sudden it was deemed necessary to have an MRI, but the symptoms before weren't. So, and every time I would say, shouldn't I get a scan? They'd always respond with, well, you're in shape, the blood work, the paperwork checks out, you just have headaches. It's quite normal in today's society. Here's a list of pain pills, come back if you need more. That was just like the ins and outs every time. And so moving forward to that crash, March 2010, it saved my life, because had I not fallen and hit my head, I'd be dead, because they would have never found the massive brain tumor. It's like a funky sweet potato looking thing, 8 centimeters long or so by 4 wide, 4 deep. And so my surgeon, Dr. Alan Friedman at Duke University, said I had another month or 2 to live based on the size of this thing and then what it was doing to me, and what I was experiencing. So it's kind of crazy, this bad, quote unquote, bad experience actually saved my life and led me on the path I'm on today. And if it wasn't for that, who knows who I'd be today, mentally and physically, if I'd be live, if I'd be riding, if I'd be doing what I'm doing today, affecting people and having my 2 biggest things that if I distill everything down to what I desire in life is growth and contribution. So to have grown as much as I have and to be contributing to the world in the way I am now, I don't think it would be that way. And so we'll never know, but I'm really thankful that I fell and hit my head that day, because I'm alive and I'm having this conversation with you and helping people along the way.
Absolutely. And there's so many, there's these silver linings of injury, of diseases, of all these things that seem to be the worst thing in the world. And then, a lot of it, a lot of it comes down to a mindset, a perspective. And this, me and you could wrap on this for a long time. But I really love your attitude and your perception of taking this quote unquote tragedy and this like why me situation and flipping it around. And what I'm really curious about is what it was like for you, when you first got the diagnosis, what it sounded like, and when your perception switched.
Yeah. So to be clear, I was driving to the doctor's office again, thinking this is just going to be a follow up to an MRI from hitting my head. They're probably going to tell me not to ride for 2-3 weeks. I'll go home. I'll chill. Cool. Like that was it. I was by myself. I had turned 21 the November prior. So 4 months into being 21 by myself, just going to the doctor's office, waiting on a report for concussion. And I'm sitting there waiting, and the doctor comes in and he says, we get the report back. There's no swelling. There's no bleeding. So that checks out. And I actually stood up and I was like, oh, thanks. Cool. I'll see you later. Be off my bike a little bit. And he said, no, like, he sit down. There's something else. The way he put it was like, there's something in your brain that shouldn't be there. And I remember laughing out loud, and I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I didn't put anything in there. So what could possibly be in my brain besides my brain? And he went on to say, well, at this time, we don't know if it's benign or cancerous, but there's a mass taking over a good portion of the left side of your brain. And so if you want a shot at preserving your life, you're gonna have surgery immediately. And then there's still a chance you may not wake up, and you'll probably never ride your bike again. Like, he was just trying to prepare me for the worst case scenario. So in my mind, all I heard was cancer, never going to ride your bike again. You may die. And instantly, a flood of emotions just ran through me, of course, but it was more so just like fear, anger, and victim mentality, like fear for my life. I thought, like, first thing that came to mind was like, oh shit, I'm dead. And then it was like, this anger of like why? Like, I haven't done anything like that bad in my life to deserve this. Like, I'm living my dream. I'm not done, So like the victim mentality, like, why me? Am I really a bad person? Like, I was questioning who I was as a human being, and I couldn't handle it. And like, it was just like, the best way I can put it was I just felt broken from all these emotions, but also it's like a scene in a movie where, a character gets some bad news, and like, it's almost like they pause time in the movie, and the camera slowly zooms out, and that ringing noise sets in the ears, and it's just like this surreal moment where your world feels like it's caving in on you, and like you just feel heavy. I was like, it was like, people talk about out of body experiences. Like, I thought I was like in my own horror movie, just watching it unfold. I couldn't handle it, so I ran out, and nurses tried to stop me, doctor tried to stop me, and I don't know how to explain that situation and that emotion unless someone has gone through and they're like, oh yeah, I get what you mean. Because like the parts of the brain that receive information and like communicate information in like two different parts. So it's like trying to like express a feeling. It's just like, yeah, it's just not something I want anyone to ever go through, which is why or what motivates me today. But I just ran out, and I sat in my car, and I just like processed and just started breaking down and thinking like, oh man, I'm going to die. Like, I need to call my mom, and words wouldn't come out, and after like a minute or two of that, she started crying, asking me what's wrong. Am I okay? Like, she knew, otherwise I would have like, cause she could hear me. I just wasn't wasn't able to speak. So it's like that bad dream where like, no matter how hard you try to yell, like nothing comes out. You just feel mute, and like you don't understand it. And so it was like all these pieces coming together, and like I just felt like I just was like, what is this? Like, I don't know. And it was mostly like fear of not living anymore, which ironically has led me to the point today, even more so after my brother passed, my younger brother, that just like this fear for life just doesn't exist in me like anymore. Like this fear of dying, like it just doesn't. I don't have this fear of death because, one, it's inevitable, but two, I understand like everything is connected, and I have a life now. So there's no point in worrying about what happens if and when I die, because it's going to happen. It's like, I have a life now. Why don't I live to the fullest and do all the things I want to do, try to be the best version of myself possible. So that's where I talk about like that moment was like this fear-based victim mentality. And now I'm on a path of survivorship and serving and supporting. But if it wasn't for that moment, who knows what I'd be doing right now, or if I'd be alive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Man, so much there. Like the the fear of death being removed. Like I can completely relate with that. My relationship with death has entirely changed. It's like I've kind of already died. It's like it's I'm still alive,
Yeah.
and it's like being here in this place and contributing, as you said, and growing so that I can contribute more and so that I can live more and be happier so that I can contribute
Yep.
more. It's all this this cycle of it. And as you were talking about that moment where it's like you can't do all the things that you love, when you're told that. Like I remember being in the hospital, unable to eat, walk, or talk, breathing through tubes, eating through tubes, left hand totally flexed inward, and the doctor was walking his residents around, came by my room with the residents and was like, "So what did you do before your brain injury?" And I couldn't talk, so I wrote, and I wrote that I play guitar as a musician and I bartended. And he looks at his residents and he's like, "Well, I'll never do that again." And music is so important to me, and it was just like crushed from that moment. And it made me think of also Kevin Pierce and his and when he was told he'll never ride again. Have you met Kevin?
No, I haven't. I feel like I've heard his name a bunch, but I haven't met him
Yeah,
yet.
I think you guys need to connect. Um, but yeah, Kevin Pierce is a Olympic hopeful snowboarder, in I think 2000.
Oh, yeah, I do know who he is.
Yeah, the
I
Crusher.
don't know if it was him or his team, but the other year we were talking on Instagram, and I
Nice.
recently just reached out to them. So I haven't met him, but he's from the New England area.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
from
He's New Hampshire, I believe.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
I know his
spoke with
story.
him at Dr. Deborah Zelinsky's Mind Eye, the Neuroplasticity of Visual Processing conference. He was
Oh,
speaking
cool.
as well. We were both there. Dr. Zelinsky's amazing.
That's sweet.
Besides the point, the point is when you're told like you can't do what you love, it's like it takes your breath away. It's like you get the wind knocked out of you.
Well, that's
And
something that's interesting that I'm super passionate about, showing people the potential they have based on the beliefs that they create for themselves
yes,
rather than giving away their power to outside influences. Like the internal environment which we possess is super powerful. And the only time it's able to be influenced is if we allow it to be influenced. And so for me, it was a lot easier to switch that being told you'll never ride again to I'm going to ride, because technically I've been told that my whole life from abusive people in my life, trying to put me down one way or another, say you're never going to do that. And that's where I talk about, like, so far, like so much of my beginnings was fueled by spite to prove people wrong. Like I'm going
right.
to succeed in spite of you so I can show you. And then I got to a point after I was told that my life would be taken away if I didn't have the surgery, and there's still a chance, that it started to shift. And you talked about, and this is where I forgot to answer, but you talked about perspective and like the pieces that helped me change that perspective. It went from spite to love, because it was gratitude to be alive and still have an opportunity to make tomorrow a thing, like in general, let alone be able to make it better than today. And that's what I try to make really, really conscious to people. It's like, if you have a thought, that means you're alive, and no one can take that from you. They can influence it if you allow them to. At the end of the day, we choose what thoughts we give emotion to and energy to, and what we believe out of that. And the things that helped me the most transition that fear to fuel to get past the surgery to ride my bike again, which happened 5 weeks after surgery, which was
Nice.
insane, was three things. My mom's story of battling colon cancer for a good portion of my young adult life and still being alive and well today. Smile on her face actually kept it for me the first years I had left home to pursue BMX, because me achieving my dream was her dream. Like, she wanted me to succeed. She wanted to see her son succeed. So like, that's insane that she did that. Kind of angry, but kind of excited and happy that she did that, because it allowed me to get to where I am today, helping people. But you never know, like the whole butterfly effect, chain reaction thing. But her story and me knowing I'm a byproduct of her and that she instilled that strength in me physically and mentally, that was the first thing. The second thing was, at this point, I created a name for myself around the world in the BMX community. And so people, whether they had met me personally or they'd heard of me before, whatever, they heard my story because of the BMX website sharing that I'm going to go in for brain surgery on a brain tumor after I fell. They reached out to let me know they're thinking of me. They, supported me, and they just gave me nothing but positive energy. So those two things started lifting me up. And then learning about Lance Armstrong's story, and like, I don't like judging people's realities versus another one and saying that's better or worse than my situation or whatever it is, but understanding the perspective that shit could always be worse, that really helped me. And I was like, man, like that dude went through brain, lung, and testicular cancer, came back and just dominated. Like, despite what people's opinions of him are and how he did it, it doesn't matter. The fact that he got back to that level in general is amazing after what he went through. And so those three things were really inspiring to me and just lit me up. And it's like exciting to talk about, because it still does. It provides that perspective to me that it could always be worse. And so the three, my mom, the BMX community, and Lance Armstrong, like those three concepts just really helped me shift my focus onto, what if I wake up? Like, not what if I don't, but like, what if I do wake up? What am I going to do? How am I going to live my life? How am I going to do things differently? How am I going to do things similarly? What does that look like? And thankfully for what I did and what I had to reflect on, I had videos of me riding and competing. Like, I literally just focused all my time and energy on when I woke up from that surgery, what it was going to be like from moving forward. And obviously I had a grace period I had to recover from, but that's why I think I was able to get out of the hospital in 2 days after surgery. Surgery took an hour and a half longer than they expected, because the tumor was wrapped around my artery and optic nerve. But I was back on my bike in 5 weeks out of surgery. And I wasn't flipping and spinning right away, but I was back on my bike. And it just, that's what I like. I can't stress enough to people. It's like, it's literally what you think. Like, everything else is an influence, is a suggestion, and the power of suggestion is really strong if you allow it to. And that's why like meditation and morning routines and affirmations and like auditing the content you consume, the conversations you have, the people you're around, everything externally in your environment is going to influence you internally. And if you're not mentally strong enough to block out what you don't want, and your subconscious you're not conscious of how your subconscious works, then like you don't have a chance. But once you can set off those alarms to really audit everything you allow in and what you give energy and power to, then the rest is history. And that's like my objective today, is to show people the potential they have for their lives when they believe in themselves and take their power and step into it.
This is perfect, man. Yeah, it's like coming into nutrition, being to build these the building blocks of your neurology, and then what are we building? Now that we have the supplies, what pathways are we building? And so the analogy I use is to say, imagine your brain is a garden. You have 86 billion plants in your garden because you have 86 billion neurons in your brain. Your thoughts are the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Your attention to those thoughts, that's the sunlight and water.
Yep.
And that's
perfect analogy. It's perfect.
Giving your thoughts to the plants you want to grow. That those flowers grow. And we all have weeds in our garden, right? And it's like giving our attention to these weeds. And I'm not saying like lock them away, like don't look at the weeds, pretend they're not there, those are weeds. But they don't need to be the focus of your attention, right? Yeah. And so as we give our attention to the plants we want to grow, those flourish. And I love that you had this visualization, you literally had a visual of you riding, and you were able to visualize and get this feeling of what you wanted to accomplish. and have that as your trajectory of where you're going. And that becomes like a, you know, a dot on a map, like a compass, a direction of like the direction you're heading is
Mhm.
towards that, you know? And I relate with that entirely. There's so much to the visualization of where you want to be and putting your attention on where you want to be, and the instead of putting your attention on the things you want to change.
Yeah. I mean, I know you and I share a passion for Dr. Joe Dispenza as well. And
Yeah.
I mean, you're familiar with this. Like, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day on any given day, and 95% of them are subconscious, and 50% of those are made up perceptions that we've made stories to, and then beliefs around, which has developed our code of our personality that we live by. And so it's like, it's so powerful because, like you said, like, we could potentially be watering and fertilizing these flowers or these weeds. Actually, we'd be watering the wrong plants in our garden, so to speak, and we're not even aware of it, just because of how we subconsciously work. And the scary part of that is, like, 0 to 12 years old is when the most profound influences happen, and it's by visuals. And, like, I love when Dr. Joe gives an example of it. He's like, you know, a lion or a tiger or whatever, like, is out there, like, with their cubs. They're not teaching them how to feed and hunt. They're like, they pull the pups out and they demonstrate. And, like, that's at that age, like, we just soak up everything we see by seeing how people communicate and how they do things and these mannerisms. And that's why we end up becoming similar to our parents or whoever we're raised by and spend a lot of time with, because we're just seeing things. And so that's why I mentioned before, like, being conscious of what thoughts, what seeds we want to sprout and to grow, and then being conscious of our actions and what we're really watering opposed to what we want to water. Like, I think that's everything. It's like that perspective and consciousness. The more I learn about consciousness, and especially with Dr. Joe's work, and as you know, how deep he gets into it, it's been 3 years now since I've been introduced to his work, and things are starting to finally click and make sense. It's everything. And I talk about, like, it was nutrition first, that for whatever reason it was, nutrition came first for me back in 2010. And then after I blew out my knee 3 years later, fitness became a new passion combined with nutrition. And then I got really conscious of consciousness and perspective and mindfulness and mindset. And then I was like, man, like, I didn't know I was building this the whole time. And now that I'm conscious of it, it's been there the whole time. But I think, and I believe, it should be number one. Like, the first thing that I think anyone should focus on is really their mindset. And that's what I do with my clients, or like anyone that asks me for help. It's like, I want to lose this amount of weight. I want to get more energy. I want to get stronger. I want to grow this business. Like, cool. What are your thoughts? What do you mean? What does that have to do with it? It's like, what do you think about it? Like, what comes to mind when you want to do this? When you say, I want to achieve this goal, what comes to mind? Well, and then they start thinking about it. And it's like all these subconscious, like, non-serving beliefs come into this. And that's how we're hardwired by society as well. We're conditioned. And it's just, yeah. So, like, I love how you put that. And I remember you told me that at KetoCon, and it's just like the best example. It's just, you have a garden in your mind. It's your brain, and you have thoughts that could be vegetables and flowers and all this beautiful life, or you could have, you know, weeds that maybe kill that beautiful life. And you may not be aware that you're watering what you don't want to water. So
Right.
it's everything.
Yes, yes. Beautiful, man. Yeah. And the you know, you talked about what allowing in the what I call the sensory diet. So what we talk about is I was taught we have 5 senses. You know, sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell. Yeah, we have way more than 5 senses, way more. You know, you can, when you are around somebody and you feel the, like, energy they put off, or the area you're in, or like if you walk into a room where people have been arguing and they're pretending they're not arguing now, you feel
Oh
it.
yeah.
You feel it immediately. And these are other senses that we have, and this is what I call the sensory diet, which is basically anything that feeds our neurology and tells our neurology, where our senses demand our attention, which is the currency of our neurology, which also makes it the currency of our like entire social structure, when it becomes cumulative and building tension in other ways. But the sensory diet that we're exposed to, and people don't realize how much control they have over their sensory diet.
Mm-hmm.
Like on Facebook, there's a button that says unfollow. Like if you're sick of hearing somebody talk about something, unfollow them. It's all
But
good.
they're addicted to those chemicals that they get from that stimulation from over time. So when they do that, their brain is looking for it. And I've noticed that.
That's true.
In my life, it's like you're always, addicted to the chemicals of stress every day. You live by that, and you try to change something. The ego steps in because of the unknown, tries to protect you from this new change and this new outcome and this new version of yourself that is unknown. But then also it's like you're so addicted to those chemical reactions that your body is thriving for it, because that's what makes it known. That's what makes it comfortable. Even if it's undesirable, it's a known comfort spot, And so it's like, that's so true. But that's like what I was saying about auditing the content you consume, whether it's social media, podcasts, a book, or people. It's really like, if it's not serving you and supporting you, there's no reason for it to be in your life. If it's like taking any of your energy, that's what like Dr. Joe talks a lot about. Like you mentioned, like the energy, how you can feel it. Like that's essentially like, I think anything that stimulates your brain, which is literally anything that comes into our awareness, like that's a sensory. But if we're giving out so much of our energy to things that don't serve us, so they don't even matter to us, how can we expect to have the energy for ourselves to heal, to grow, to manifest, if our focus and our energy therefore is on anything but that? And that's what I've been learning with meditation. It allows you to block out all the stimuli and just look at your thoughts and look at yourself and just be. And like, then you have all the energy to do what you want with that, rather than other things like energy vampires. Like I love how Joe Rogan calls them energy vampires, like just taking your energy. Like, why not just keep it for yourself?
Right. Yeah. I was talking to a friend about this, about how attention is the currency, and we even talk about it as currency. We say, pay attention, pay attention.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so the thing is, I don't think it's paying like a bank account. Like if I give attention to one thing, it takes away attention from another thing. I call it investing our attention.
Mm-hmm.
And good investments like build us up. We feel good. Like we feel energized from investing our attention in certain things. Hopefully people listening to this podcast are feeling energized and elevated from it, right?
Yep.
And then there's, energy vampires, like you're saying. I say those are poor investments, and those people suck. They suck our energy, right? Like energy vampires suck our energy, yeah, they suck. They suck. I realize that term absolutely has validation in what's actually happening to our attention throughout the day. It's beautiful, man.
Yeah. It's very important to be aware of these things. Otherwise you're just going to lose your energy. Like you said, like energy is our body's currency. Like ATP, if you want to get technical, like that's our body's currency. And the more I learn about the mitochondria too, like the more that I'm just like, man, like just how our thoughts are so powerful because of the chemical reactions they create. And if you're negatively affecting your mitochondria, that's like energy production 101. And so if you're stressed, if you're in guilt and shame and these negative chemicals, not negative, but like these chemicals in overabundance are occurring, you're damaging mitochondria on top of a stressful diet, a poor diet, and then all these other things. And it's just, energy is everything. So the more you can focus on preserving your energy to invest it wisely, as you mentioned, the better off you're going to be, the better you're going to show up, the better relationships you're going to have, the better life you're going to have. and the easier it's going to be to focus on being positive rather than trying to force positivity. It's just like, you're going to be able to step into being what you want to be, and you'll become that eventually the more and more you believe in it.
You mentioned that you, like, first of all, I love how you're talking about these technical, like higher level aspects of things like ATP and mitochondria and like cellular respiration and things of that sort. And you have a GED and went to technical school. I don't even know what for, but your education, you were self-taught. You were self-taught and self-taught out of necessity, not to pass a test, but you were studying like your life depends on it, because it does.
Yeah.
And that is so, I mean, I absolutely am, self-taught as well. Like I was relearning how to walk, but I had the internet. And so I'm listening to podcasts, watching videos, reaching out to practitioners all over the place and being like, yo, here's a little bit about me. Here's a little bit about my story. I saw this video. I get this. This is a question I have. And building these connections with practitioners, and then starting to take online courses. Yep. And we have such a means of self-education with the internet generation, and what's literally at our fingertips is phenomenal. And I really like the self-taught aspect of both of us,
Yeah.
GD, like been riding bikes, and you are so on point with your understanding of what works and what doesn't, and what it really, really, really comes down to is your experience. You have the wisdom, you have the experience that when you're passing the test, not so much. So
and
I think give you that.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I respect that about you as well. And I think that's what's interesting to think about, is like the ability to consume information and retain information when you're passionate about something, especially when your life depends on it. Which I argue that this information, goes for anyone's life depends on it. But right. it makes sense. And when you're forced in an environment to learn stuff, like you're not willing to, because maybe you don't want to be told what to do, or you're just not interested. And so when I was able to find something I'm super passionate about and was going through the learning, and like how like hard and difficult it was to learn these things, that didn't matter, because I was going to learn it because I wanted to. And it was funny, when I met Dr. Dom for the first time, he was asking me the same thing. He's like, so like, what level of education do you have? And I was like, junior year. And he's like, oh, college? And I was like, no, high school. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I dropped out of high school to pursue BMX. And he's like, well, how did you learn all this stuff? And I was like, well, just researched, listened to podcasts that you were on, Dr. Ryan Lowry, read these research papers, these books, and it started with Dr. Perlmutter really getting me involved with keto, and his book Grain Brain was in 2013. But I was just like, I just consumed it all. Like I was in a fearful state, and I didn't want the brain tumors to come back, which they did 2 more times. But like I was in the state of like empowerment. Like I need to empower myself with tools. Education's cool, but education doesn't mean anything unless you do something with it. Like it's like, and that's what I did an Instagram post about this the other day. Like I'm really passionate about people that teach and coach and inspire, mentor, whatever you want to call it, education and experience. Otherwise, you're just sharing and teaching theory. If you have no hands-on experience, if you have no personal experience, you're just teaching a theory, because you don't know if it really works or not. You're just sharing what you learned in a book or memorized in school to pass a test. And that to me isn't valuable. It may be valuable, but like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, and I went through that with my ACL surgery. I asked all my friends, anyone I knew that actually went through a surgery, what graft type did they use? And what did you like? What did you not like? And everyone that had gone through it said the same thing, a hamstring graft. And I was like, okay. that's what the literature is showing me. I'm going to say that. But I had someone else in my life telling me, no, you need to do this. And I was like, but you have zero experience with that. You're just reading some old textbook. Like, this is like new age stuff that's happening now. I take experience over a piece of paper that tells you what letters to go after your name any day of the year. And I think that's important. It's like walking your talk, not just talking, not just teaching theory, but experience as well. I think that means the world to me.
Yeah, it's are you qualified? Have you been through what I'm going through? And are you where I want to be after that scenario? Then you're qualified. And I want to hear what you have to say. Very, very much. I want to work with you. I want to do all of that. And so, you're talking about working with clients and setting their mindset. Number one, that's exactly what I do with my clients as well. Again, with the sensory diet, most of my clients have a loved one who's going through a situation similar to what I went through. Mm-hmm. And they are, they have a loved one in a hospital setting or going through recovery in some way, shape, or form, right? And it's like, number one, we need to give them the sensory diet that's going to be conducive to healing, which means that everybody's mindset needs to be in the place where it's conducive to healing. So let's talk about what you want. Let's talk about your thoughts, and let's focus our attention on what we want to grow. Yeah. So, I wanted to ask you about what you're passionate about now. Like, it sounds like you were passionate about nutrition. What brought your passion to nutrition? Because I'm in the same boat, which is why I wrote a book on nutrition as my first book.
Yeah. No, nutrition came first, like I said, and then exercise and mindset. But it was really just seeing a documentary after I'd recovered in 2010 that just the way they put the information made so much sense to like what you do with your lifestyle choices. In that instance, it was nutrition and the effects it has on your health. Today, I'm super passionate about the ketogenic diet and lifestyle and mitochondria specifically. The more I learn about mitochondria, the more I think that needs to be the center of conversation with whatever diet you're looking at, which no matter what diet you're looking at, if you're trying to optimize mitochondria, then you're going to be looking at ketones, which is a state of ketosis to get ketones. So it's like just the way that all works with the mitochondria and the things that it upregulates and downregulates. Like there's just so much profound benefit from having ketones in your body. So super passionate about that. And then super passionate about the topic of quantum thinking and quantum mechanics and like all things like that Dr. Joe Dispenza and Nicola Pera, they talk about. And it's like how our thoughts really transform the physical form based on all these emotions and these chemical responses and these triggers and all these things. And that all just boils down to the one macro, which is I want to show people the potential they have for their lives when they decide to empower themselves with these tools that we're conditioned to think that we don't have control over. So simply what you put in your mouth, what you put in your mind, that is going to lead into actions that you take or don't take, which is going to create your reality you live in. If you want to change that reality, you need to change your thoughts, change what you consume in a physical or biological manner. And that's what I'm passionate about today, is just really just helping people. Like I never thought that I'd be speaking or doing podcast interviews with people that I may have not met before, may have met once, or just whatever. Like everything I do, I'm writing a book as well. I'm trying to finish up the rough draft now. Like everything I do is to help people with what I've gone through, because I don't want people to live in a reactive state. I want people to be proactive. And when you think about like a reactive state, that's like survival, that's stress. When you think about stress, cortisol and adrenaline, like your blood flow leaves your organs and goes to your extremities so you can fight or flight. Like you can leave or you can fight or you can hide, like things like that. So it's like, how can you expect to grow and repair if that's happening? And so that's why people say, like, you can't have fear and gratitude. You can't have hate and gratitude. Like, a true state of gratitude is a state of homeostasis, I believe. Like, the only reason we have all these opposing states is because we create them. We have nothing attacking us for the most part, depending on where you live in the world. We have no chronic stress other than what we create and we allow. And so I just really am passionate about sharing with people how to optimize their life. I guess that's what actually that just reminded me, or I just kind of brought that too. Like, my main objective is optimizing people's lives by their thoughts and their actions.
Yeah. Nice, man. Nice. And, you use the word homeostasis, and it got me thinking back to what you said earlier, which kind of is the dark side of homeostasis, which is this addiction to stress chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, as living organisms, we try to maintain homeostasis, which isn't optimal performance. It's the status quo. It's where we are with things, it's what things are currently. So anytime you're switching that, your body resists change, And so if it's used to receiving all these stress chemicals, when we switch that, when we try to do something other than that, our body kind of freaks out a little bit. It's like, oh, this isn't what we're used to, right? And there's this kind of uncomfortable state there, where you would think the uncomfortable state, the stress, is uncomfortable, but we get so used to it that we begin to like crave it and expect it, and our body like is used to it. And it's like moving away from stress is actually stressful.
Yeah.
And so it's like a dark side of homeostasis. And moving into a calm, centered, I don't quite remember the word you said, but essentially a loving state where it's like calm, cool, collected, understanding, encouraging, cooperative, all of those things makes a huge difference in our own physiology and begins to turn down the volume on the stress. And then after a while, that becomes the norm. That becomes our homeostatic environment.
Yeah, it's an interesting cycle. It can really confuse you and frustrate you trying to learn it. I'm now diving into learning about the epigenetic effects from like neuropeptides, from these like how chemical addictions in the body from emotions really occur. And it's super fascinating. But like the more I learn, the more I'm like, that makes so much sense. Like once you start understanding how proteins replace each other and that like will upregulate or downregulate gene expression, and like how that just goes cycles through our thoughts and our emotions and our actions, and then how that triggers a thought and emotion and action and experience, and like all these cycles, it's like, man, like no wonder change is hard, especially when you're dealing with the same stimuli every single day. Like what's interesting is most people that work a 9 to 5, the majority of them aren't happy with what they're doing, and they spend the majority of their time with people that they don't enjoy doing something they don't enjoy doing, rather than in a space where they feel their best and with their family and people they love. And then that in return makes them show up in a negative manner, so they don't have the relationships that they want with the people that they love. And then that just continues this cycle. And it's like a sleep deprivation, and then like cortisol, and then high cortisol levels mess with your sleep. And then that just continues and continues. It's like this nonstop train. And as we get older, neuroplasticity gets harder to achieve, and it keeps going against us. So it makes sense when you dive deep into the science of it, like why it's so hard to break the habit of being yourself, to create a version of yourself to be optimal. And it's like, dang, like that's intense.
So,
but it's possible.
It's possible. So I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time to jump into it. What are some of the first things you start to do with your clients in order to move them into a more productive mental state?
Yeah. So the first thing I do, we go over their goals. Like what are you trying to accomplish? But like, we don't just go over and set goals. It's like, what are you trying to accomplish? And now like more in depth, why? And so I created like a 45-minute exercise that I've recorded and all that. Like it takes them through the ins and the outs of it. Like what, like, let's say you want to lose 10 pounds. Okay. Why? Because I want to, be able to fit in my clothes better. I want to feel better. I want to have more confidence. I want to be able to hang with my kids. I want to be able to go up the stairs without running out of breath. I want to be out of pain. I want to be more energized and all these things. Like, okay, so that's the goal. The weight is a byproduct of reaching that goal. So like, let's focus on how we can make that goal happen. So like what I do is like set, help them work with them to set a goal, but like a purpose with that goal, like the clarity around it. Like, what happens if you reach this goal? How is life different? What happens if you don't? You're saying X, Y, and Z is what you're experiencing now. Like, how does that, magnify down the road, and like, is that something you want? Like, and like, who outside of yourself does reaching this goal or not reaching this goal affect in your life? Things like that. So really just get really clear on the deep rooted purpose of that goal, and then just go from there. And so it's like, it's everything around the mindset, it's like really like, what are you trying to accomplish? And then like really diving into like, well, what's stopping you? What are your obstacles that are presenting themselves, and how can we change those? And but yeah, it's really just mindset, like and I share a couple other things about different awareness things. And that's what I think it comes back to, is being focused and clear on what you're trying to do in your life, and then really auditing what's going on in your mind. Because I think step one is being conscious of the unconscious. So when you can do that, then you actually have a chance at changing it. Otherwise, you may just be aimlessly going down the road till one day, like me, I got a wake up call. Like, but I don't think everyone needs that. I don't believe everyone needs that. But I guess I did. And so I really think it just comes down to just like starting with being conscious of the unconscious, and then making a tactical action item plan, moving forward.
Exactly. Clarity on what you want. Number one step. I I tell everybody that's the most important question you're ever going to answer. What do you want? Right? And when you get clear on what it is you want, then everything else is just putting pieces in place that are in alignment with what you want. And that roadmap just presents itself. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's, I mentioned this, I believe I mentioned this in my talk, but like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Not what do you think you want based on society or your parents or your family or your spouse or your kids or your coworkers. Like, what do you want? But I find there's a lot of resistance around what people really want, because this is how it showed up for me. It's like a disbelief in achieving what they want, or having what they want, or a not believing they deserve what they want. I think those two things are what limit a lot of people, the majority of people, from taking action. And thankfully, the mindset I had when I first started chasing my dream, I was 17. I didn't have these disbeliefs in it. Like, I just was so curious and optimistic. Optimistic. Yeah, I drew a blank for a second.
Like, optometrist.
Optimistic about like, this is what I want. This is what I have to do to achieve it. Do it. Let's see how it goes. I wasn't thinking like all these things like, oh, I don't deserve that. Like, now that I've gotten older, I've been like, oh, I've been experiencing these things. But I think that's what shows up in resistance, what people truly want. And they make like excuses for what they want, and they justify it, and it may be small, but they truly want something up here. But it's like, why not have that? Like, why not? Like, anyone that looks something like you, that's doing something you want, there's a roadmap and the possibilities for yourself. They didn't just get handed it, they had to do something for it. And people make the argument, well, they were born into it, but like, they have to maintain it. Like, they have to do something about it. But at the end of the day, like, really just, what do you want? Truly, what do you want?
What do you want? Why do you want it? And getting to the core of it. Yeah, man. Well, man, how can people learn more about you? Where can they find you? How can they work with you?
All my stuff's super simple. All social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the same, at Josh Perry BMX. And then my website is just joshperrybmx.com. that's most active on Instagram. So shoot me a DM, I will respond. But yeah, it's all just Josh Perry BMX until I decide to buy joshperry.com, which I think they were trying to sell it for like $3,000 last time I checked. So I didn't know that was a thing. People buy URLs and just sit on them, and
Totally.
key search words, the price goes up and up. And I'm like, oh man. So and the Instagram that's been taken from 2013, but they're not active and don't respond. So for now, Josh Perry BMX.
Yeah, I'm dealing with something similar with that, and we'll talk about that off the air. But man, awesome to just to know you, to chat with you. There's so much synergy between us. The nutrition to the mindset. That's my next book is called How to Feed a Mind. It's exactly like we're on similar trajectories, and it's just such a pleasure to spend some time with you, and thank you for sharing with the audience.
Yeah, likewise, man. I appreciate your time. It's an honor to chat with you. I'm so stoked that we get to meet in person, and hopefully we'll meet again soon, or maybe we'll hang out again soon. And we'll have to get you on Jackie and I's podcast as well to share your story and your perspectives on life. I think you'd really enjoy getting to chat with her as well.
Yeah, I would love that.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you.
All right, brother. I'll see you. So there he is. That's Josh Perry. I don't know if you've seen him ride. He's just awesome. The moves he has on a ramp are awesome. His mindset, it's so in alignment with everything I'm doing, and really appreciate that guy. And the fact that we can create our realities with the thoughts we think and our attention to them. And I'll expand on that more. But for now, that's the beauty of thoughts and attention. This is what we can create. And it goes beyond, it goes as deep as like when we're in a really serious medical emergency. Our thought process during it is so important. And the thought process of the people around us and we surround ourselves with is very important as well. So yeah, if you're enjoying this podcast, head over to Patreon and throw me $1 or $2 per episode. Really helps me cover the costs. If you'd like to work with me, reach out. feedyourbrain.com/consult. And that's what I got for y'all. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting and writing reviews and showing your support so that this podcast gets in the earbuds of more people. So thank you guys so much, and until next time, I will see y'all later. All right, adios.
Someone take me to a doctor.